What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 805. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, what's up, man? How it goes?
Oh, it's going great. Had it on a kind of cube hot streak recently, which always feels kind of good, and playing a bunch of Constructed, which is also pretty nice. I don't know, just playing a lot of Magic these days. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's not the worst. I saw that you've been dipping your toe into the vintage, not cube, but just vintage Constructed pool a bit on your videos.
Yeah, I hadn't played Vintage in a bit, and so it sounded fun to try out, and I've tried out a couple different decks, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Vintage is, many don't know this, but it was my entry into tournament Magic was through Vintage, which is not, I think, a particularly common route.
That is a wild way to get started, but yeah, I guess it's probably a little different now than it was back then, huh?
Oh yeah, I would say that.
So we're going to we were hoping to be able to do the set review this week, but it turns out the set isn't going to be quite available in time for us to record this week. So it's going to be next week instead. And since we didn't get to do a proper Q&A episode, I did the kind of solo thing when Luis was out of town, but we didn't get to do one with both of us. We figured this is probably the best time to do it. This is kind of the dark zone, between when a set's been out for a long time and is more or less behind us, and another one is just about to come out. And so this is usually a good time for us to do, a Q&A style episode. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to answer Patreon questions on the show this week. And by the way, they can be about anything. So you're going to buckle up. You can get all different types of stuff thrown at you, not just Magic related. And with that in mind, we did want to say thank you to everybody who supports us on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/limited resources. And you get a thank you card and a LR sticker in the mail, no matter what level you sign up for. And we really appreciate everybody who does do that. Again, patreon.com/limited resources. Also, we want to say thank you to Ultimate Guard for supporting the show. They make the best stuff in the business. High quality, well-engineered, great materials. That's a really killer combo for almost any consumer product. And Ultimate Guard has that when it comes to protecting your cards, whether it's at the card level, the deck level, the collection level when you get home. Organizing your cards so that you have them available to you to build decks and, buy, sell, etc. They've got it all. And that means sleeves, deck boxes, long boxes, binders, everything that you may need. And it's top tier, well thought out, well designed, really great product. It just really is across the board. Every once in a while you come across one of those companies that just really gets it and they make good stuff and they understand the needs of their customers. And that's what Ultimate Guard is. If you want to find their products, you can browse them at ultimateguard.com. If you want to actually pick something up, you can get it from your favorite online retailer or your favorite local game store. Luis, we're going to get right into the Q&A, but first, got to say happy birthday to Paul Cheon.
Turning the big 40.
Big 4-0. You've known Paul since he was maybe technically a child, like he wasn't an adult yet, maybe?
No.
Not quite?
I think me and Paul met when it's like I was like 21 and he was 19 or something like that, or 20 and 22.
So just there, half his life you've known him.
About 20 years, almost exactly. So yeah, he's 20 and I was 22, something like that.
Oh,
so
that's crazy.
Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah. Happy birthday, Paul. Obviously, he's a big part of this show and also a very close friend of both Luis and mine and coworker. I mean, Paul's just a big part of our life, full stop. So we just wanted to say happy 40th to Paul. And I guess he's called me old forever. I think he gives you a little bit of can we call him old now?
Yeah. Easy.
Okay.
For sure.
Good. Cause I really couldn't before. I'm like, yeah, well, you got me there, but now I'm going to give it to him. Okay, so happy birthday to Paul. Let's get into the questions now. Where did I put them? Right here. No, not right here. And I already lost them. How do you like that? I seriously did. That's hilarious. Give me 1 second.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that is. I put so much effort into making sure. One thing that people don't know is that if you're not a patron for the show, you wouldn't know, is that we do actually stream our show live. You can watch the YouTube version, but we stream the behind the scenes episode, meaning that we stream like before we start recording and after we are done recording. And you get to see if we have a false start or, anything like that. Nonsense before and after. And for some reason, the last couple of times I put it up on the Patreon, I put the post up, but I didn't put the link in it right away. And thank God Squirrel Loot saved me both times. But this time I put all that effort into putting the link up and then somehow lost our Q&A. But I have it in front of us now. So our first question comes from Chris. And Chris says, hi, Marshall. Hi, Luis. First of all, thanks for all the years of top content and congratulations on 800 episodes. That's huge. Thanks, Chris. I have a question about drafting Boros in Tarkir Dragonstorm. With how easy it is to do the multicolored soup thing, I find Boros really difficult to get into. Even if I open a great red or white rare, I'm too tempted by all the powerful 3-color cards, and by the time I realize Boros is open, it's too late to move in, or I've gotten a powerful looking deck already, so I figure I should just stay the course. How do you typically find your way into the deck? Or more generally, how do you work out when to draft the aggro deck in a slightly slower, bomby format?
That's an interesting question. I think that aggro, just like any of the other decks, does have some things that are like going to be more likely to drive to kind of get you into that archetype. It's kind of like if you see a Roiling Dragonstorm or like a Caustic Exhale or a Dragonstorm Globe or something, one of the rare dragons, maybe those are pretty strong reasons to draft 5-color. The best reasons to get into Boros, well, a Boros rare, I mean, that certainly would be the best way to actually do it. Of course, you're not going to have that happen all the time. So one of the things that you'd want to look for, like getting a 3rd or 4th pick premium common, like a Shock Brigade 5th pick, for example, that's pretty big. If you're getting 4th pick Mardu Devotee into 5th pick Shock Brigade into 6th pick War Effort, like some pretty good cards in the middle of the pack. The first couple packs, it's kind of hard to tell you to go any particular way, but I think that you can look at like the middle of the pack, and that's early enough to still kind of change course, and you're not overly committed to drafting whatever it is you were drafting before, but still late enough that you can actually see that, oh, these things are open. This is actually a good opportunity to do this.
Yeah, there's just enough overlap cards, with Molten Exhale and things like that you can still hedge slightly in the early stages and then get that nice uncommon 3rd or 4th, and you go, okay, I'll settle in, because the only that deck is really good. It performs very well against the meta of a bunch of slow tap lands and all that kind of stuff. It's a really good deck. The only risk that I see with drafting it is just that you're the 3rd person in it at the table, and then you and 2 other people are fighting it out for 2 colors in a certain type of deck and the cards that go in it, where everybody else is like, I don't care. I'm going to be 5-color, and so is they, and everybody else at the table is too. So I just want to know, hey, if I get a 3rd pick good uncommon or a 4th pick good uncommon, that's enough for me to say, okay, let's try this thing. Because it is a good deck. Every time I've drafted it, which hasn't been that many, but when I do, I'm like, yeah, this thing's great.
I mean, the hardest part of almost any draft, in the drafts that are difficult, I want to just put a little parentheses, because some drafts, you open Meringue River region, and then you get past Roiling Dragonstorm, and then you get past 2 Molten Exiles, and it's just like, okay, this isn't a hard draft. But the hardest part of most drafts is when you have to commit for the first time. Like, let's say you open on Molten Exile, and then 2nd pick, you take like a Mystic Monastery, kind of a weak pack. 3rd pick, you take, let's say, Rally the Monastery, a decent card. So you have a red card, a white card, and a Jeskai land. Great. But then like, oh, do I want Encroaching Dragonstorm or Shock Brigade 4th pick? And it's like, I can take Encroaching Dragonstorm, it's the green one, and I can go for the 5-color deck, and this is a perfectly fine start for that. It's also a pretty good start for red-white. And Shock Brigade's a pretty good card in that deck. So you actually are kind of put into a position where you actually have to make some kind of commitment there, and that's always nerve-wracking, because then the next pick you're looking there and you're just like, of course there's a Dragonstorm Globe next pick and no good red or white cards. Or if you take, in the case where you take Encroaching Dragonstorm and then next pick you're like, oh look, it's another Shock Brigade, or let's say even better, like a Sharpshooter, the 1/3 that pings them for 1. And it's like, there's no right way to, or right answer in a lot of these cases, but you do have to, just at some point you do have to make a decision.
Next question comes from Ryan, who says, hey, I got a pretty quick one here. Now we'll see. With the introduction of the Marshall test, I have one genuine question. In any of the sets of the last year, would you run a 7 mana cost 1/1 creature with text that literally reads, at the start of your next untap, you win the game?
I mean, that sounds like a pretty reasonable card to try
It
to
does
build
to
around.
me too.
I don't know if it'd be good, but it does sound pretty reasonable to me.
It does to me too. You know, by that stage of the game, a lot of the times players have exhausted their resources with regards to removal. They don't really make pingers anymore. You know, so it's one of those things where like there's a good chance, I would say quite a good chance, you know, that you could cast this and just say go. And it asks the ultimate question. Do you have any way to manage a creature or not? I think the other thing, this maybe isn't quite as much in the spirit of the question, but it is how Magic works, which is like my brain goes to, well, what are the sets that have Snakeskin Veil in it?
That's the first card I was going to mention. It's like,
yeah,
you if you just wait a turn and you play this with a Snakeskin Veil up, you got to be pretty likely to win most of those games.
right. And, you know, and maybe you could build around it to the point that you played, you know, more of those protection type cards. Maybe you play a little bit more hand disruption. So the turn before you're planning on casting it, you go, okay, what do you got? You know, and then you slam that thing the next turn and then you cross your fingers that they don't have anything. I mean, it's the meat of the question gets kind of interesting in that if they do untap and kill it, use a card to do so. Well, it's still a 1-for-1, but it probably was a massive tempo hit against you. I don't know that at the 7 mana slot that's really the number one concern. That type of thing really tends to bite you in the developing part of the game, you know, turns 1 through 4, maybe up to turn 5, something like that, where, you know, if you play a 5-drop and they use 2 mana to remove it and play a 3, like that's how you can lose a game pretty quick. But you know, if you're playing a 7 mana, potentially win you the game card and they untap and kill it kind of with any amount of mana, you know, you're never going to be ahead on that transaction. My gut says that yes, you would play that. I think it would be extremely unfun. I mean, that's just like a very bad card design, right, Luis? Like you wouldn't consider that.
Not a very interesting card. It's like, it's completely all in. It's not that interactive. Like it's interactive in the sense that if you can kill a creature, maybe you get out of it, but it's like, most of the games involving this card are not. It's either one player or another is going to be pretty frustrated, and they're not going to be a ton of fun for it.
Yeah,
it's also like you don't like gating. You win the game behind lots of mana plus a 1/1 surviving is so much less interesting than have 5 different colors of dragons into play or have 10 creatures in your graveyard or whatever.
That's funny. Yeah, I just imagined that horrible, why is it still there, drives me nuts. Did you have fun this game thing on Arena? You know, and like that's one of the few
I just don't answer it. I just skip it.
I always skip it.
It's my protest.
I'm so begrudging. Like, how is it? Whatever. I know it's just something that they threw on there, and it is what it is, and maybe they get some data out of it. But it's like, I would guarantee that it highly correlates to whether the person won. And I would also just say from a user perspective, if you are the one who lost and it asks you that, it's like a tiny version of the good game of the person who won giving you the good game. Like it has a little bit of vibes of that. And also, come on, if I hit skip 3 times on it, just don't show it to me anymore. I'm not interested in that anymore. You know, like I'm not game for that. Spencer says, Dear Dr. LR, are there any cultural food blind spots you're hoping to remedy in the future? Luis has mentioned his love of Ethiopian a few times, and producer Jeff has mentioned a favorite from Ireland. Is there any part of the world that you think your palate is missing out on that you hope to rectify soon? I know mine.
What's yours?
South America.
Oh.
Because I've had food from different South American countries, but I don't know if I just don't have enough of it around me, or if there hasn't been like one of those really strong trends where a food like becomes a thing, you know, that maybe it wasn't before. And now it's like, oh yeah, we're going to go get this. But if somebody says, hey, we're going to go get X food, I'm like, I don't know what that is exactly. Like, I'm not sure what to expect from that. I'm generally game regardless, but that's one that I'd really like to have a better understanding to kind of find what my favorites are.
For me, I mean, I think I want to go back to Singapore because it's one of the coolest places I was for Magic. And
you went there for a PT or something, or? There
was a Grand Prix in Singapore and then a Pro Tour in Nagoya the week after. And Team CFB, we went and tested at a hotel in Singapore, and it was a great trip. It was we did make it out a few times, but we were on a much bigger like time crunch and lower budget than I would be these days because I was traveling to play some Magic, not
on vacation,
be a tourist. So I ended up not really enjoying it as much as I would. But I don't think there's like a big class of food that I'm not acquainted with that I guess I wish I was, because I feel like I have a pretty broad palate. I've never had a spice bag though, so next time I go to Ireland,
I'll have speaking of Irish delicacies, I haven't had one of those. Also, Spencer says, auxiliary question from the sideboard. When is the last time you encountered something besides Magic that you immediately knew you could do better than the person you were observing? Maybe it's from Marshall's Watch World or Luis in his cooking, but what activity was someone botching so hard you had to resist stepping in and fixing it? And then it says intercepting Luis, making a stepping in to LR to save Marshall joke. That's pretty good, Spencer. You and I aren't really built like that, right? I mean, the things that we're good at, we took time and effort to get good at, right?
I will say that like when I try a new game, sometimes like I've had this experience of someone teaches me a game and I can pretty quickly see like, you're actually
that makes sense.
I think I understand some of these things a little better, but like that's just still more Magic, right? Like it's not actually Magic, but like I had someone teach me the Star Wars, I think Unlimited is what it's called now, the new Star Wars game. And as we're playing, it was like, oh, I actually think I understand this game pretty well now. I've played a lot of games. That's not the same as, like I'm not going to go into like most performances or stores and be like, I think I could be doing that better than you. That's just not really how I would approach things. But
yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
But I do think that sometimes about stuff that I have spent a long time on. I get opinions, right? Where I'm like, oh, you shouldn't do it that way, even though it's like everybody has a different approach, right? And different things work for different people. But I definitely do have my, some of my, oh, you should have done this, that kind of thing. But that's just natural. And I don't ever tell people, how to do the thing that they're doing that I'm not even doing. That's pretty rude. Simon says, howdy, let's say you're drafting a slower format or a slower low power cube. Is there a limit or threshold to the number of tap lands you're willing to play? How high is the cost of playing too many? If you're in 2 to 3 colors, or if you just, or do you just jam all of them? Thanks for the countless hours of wisdom and good vibes, Simon. There's definitely a limit.
There is. In a non-cube format, the limit's pretty high. Like, we just came off Dragons where you would just play 12 tap lands in your deck and it was fine. Mm-hmm. Like, the gain lands also, when you do that, you get to gain 4 life a game, and that actually is pretty significant too. In cube, I don't have like a hard limit, but it kind of depends. What is my curve? What is my deck? Like, a red-white aggro deck is just not going to be interested in like the 3rd tap land. The first 2 may be fine. Like, it'll play an Elegant Parlor for sure, and like a Savai Triumph or whatever. Mm-hmm. But once it has those 2, it's really not that interested in a Raugrin Triumph to kind of like bolster its mana fixing. Whereas an Esper control deck that has Swords to Plowshares, Dismember, Duress, and Spell Pierce or something, it's like 5 tap lands in that deck and it'll be totally fine. So it's a little bit more nuanced of a question, but I think for cube, it's usually like the 3rd is I start to get suspicious, and in normal limited, there's not that high. There's not that much of an upper limit really.
Yeah. I feel like in any reasonably faster format, you feel that much quicker. But if you're putting this under the rubric of, this is a slow format, then 8. I don't know. Guntars says, hi guys, big fan of the show. I started playing Magic with the release of Ether Drift and I really enjoy it. It's also my first TCG. And Gunter says, for reference, I'm 31 years old, if that matters. So far, I have played a lot of Constructed, mostly Standard. After grinding out Mythic rank on Arena, it's become a bit boring. I suspect mostly due to the Arena economics and not being able to play many different decks without spending a ton of money and playing against the same 3 to 4 decks in rank Standard. Well, yeah, that's Constructed. I started doing drafts on Arena and immediately realized that this is the format for me. Welcome, Gunter. This is you are home.
This is perfect.
Yes, yeah. You have found the gold at the end of the rainbow. I, however, am struggling a bit with doing reasonably well in drafts, and the games even with taking in and applying the points from your level up episodes and the podcast in general. Here are a few things I'd love your take on. As a fairly new player, how many games would you say would be reasonable to do well in? Currently, I get about 2 to 3 wins on average before getting to the third loss. So we'll go in order here, Luis. If we're talking, I'm assuming we're talking about best of 1, trying to get to that 7-win threshold. 4 is the next stopping point, by the way, because that's where you get your money back for the draft, more or less.
It's hard to consider a 4-3 finish anything but like solid. Like you don't feel like you crushed the draft because you didn't. But you when you get your money back in a draft, you don't really feel like you lost either. At least I don't. Right.
So would you say that the 2 to 3 win range is pretty appropriate for a fairly new player?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel bad about that.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right to me for somebody who's still in the learning phases. Next one, does the use of something like Untap GG Companion, where it tells you what cards are good and assists you with deck building, actually help with increasing skill, or does it subtract from learning by assisting with decision making? I mean, this is a question that we could apply to the world right now, right? As we've seen AI, the way that it's developed has been in this mode where it's this kind of co-pilot companion, helper bot thing that has been sort of the first big thing that's broken through. And so I think that, this is going to be something that we're going to be dealing with a lot in jobs and careers and the way that we learn and live our lives. So it's a good question to ask in this case, because there are trade-offs. It can assimilate information much quicker than you could and in ways that you couldn't. So you can more or less ask it questions. That's not true for Untap GG, but the things that it's presenting are kind of it's presenting the questions that you would have wanted to ask automatically. So that part's really cool. But yes, if you do not take the time to build up the fundamental underpinnings of how to make those decisions, you are leaving equity on the table, no doubt about it. If you just offload it to 17 lands or untapped and you're just taking it face value, you never really question those numbers, when to make exceptions, how they got there, all of those type of things, then yeah, you're definitely leaving something out. I would say that at the stage that you're at, Gunter, I would keep myself aware of these tools, but I would try to lean towards using them less rather than more as you build up the muscles that sort of allow you to one day maximize using those tools. What do you think?
Yeah, you want to build up your intuition before you necessarily kind of get the test answers. And they're not even really the test answers, but you kind of know what we mean there.
Next one, he says, are there any of your episodes I should go back and listen to that will accelerate the learning process? Yes. And one thing you can do is you can go to the limited resources episode finder that I talked about a few episodes ago, and I did put a link up as well. And that one will actually allow you to search by level up episode, which are more evergreen. They don't lean on the current set that's out at that time. And they also have a content description attached to them. You can also see who the host was, and you can even filter by co-host. By the way, Paul's on there now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Congrats once again to Paul. So yes, you can go back and
made it.
You finally made it. You can look at the headlines for those level up episodes and do the ones, especially that are aimed more towards early learning, let's call it. And finally, how did you guys do when you first started out drafting? Did you do well straight away, or did you get your backside handed to you, like in my case?
I got beaten badly. When I first started drafting, it was like I was an okay player at the local shop, but definitely not one of the best. And there was people who had drafted quite a bit more than me. So did a lot of losing, but was also, it actually is kind of like the Pro Tour. I went to the Pro Tour, didn't win. I went 8-7 at my first PT, and I was convinced this is exactly what I wanted to do. So draft was like that for me. It was like I wasn't winning a lot, but boy, did I know that this is what I wanted to get better at.
There was a lot of meat on that bone. Yeah, for sure. For me, yeah, I lost quite a bit, but it wasn't quite a bloodbath at the beginning because I had talked to Ryan, the original co-host of LR, Ryan Spain, a lot, and done a lot of like what I would call theory crafting, just sort of trying to understand the fundamentals. And also I had played when I was in high school. So it's not like I'd never touched a Magic card at that point. I wasn't a competitive player, so I wasn't really into like the rules. I didn't really understand game theory in any level back then. But by the time I came back to Magic, I had already gone through the journey of becoming a poker player. And I was the whole thing that we were doing on the podcast at the beginning was kind of translating the lessons that we learned from poker over to Magic because there's so many corollaries. So when I came in, I was better than I think you'd think straight away. Like I had a decent floor, but moving up was tough from there. And it took me a long time. And it wasn't because of like any innate talent or whatever. It was because of Ryan helping me translate some of the things that I had learned. And I mean, it felt really interesting to me at the time too, because especially back then, Magic players were just a lot looser about a whole lot of stuff. They would tell you what they had. They would just do all this stuff. And I was just sitting there holding my hand and just looking at them and being like, is it my turn or whatever? And, the other thing that came up a lot is that poker, Magic's decent at this too, but poker's particularly good at just beating the hell out of the idea of you having a weak mental game. Right? Like getting on tilt or, just letting yourself get so caught up in perceived bad luck. And I was really lucky because I got to skip all that because I went through all that with poker. And I did. I mean, I was like that with poker until I finally figured it out. But by the time I got to Magic, I was able to take a bad beat. I understood variance and I didn't have to, I didn't start off telling bad beat stories. Like I had already gone through that. And so it was like, yeah, I get it. Something went not the way that you wanted it to go. Next, right? Like we just keep putting ourselves in situations. Every turn's a new thing and off you go. And so I was kind of in that mode too.
It's funny because most people that we know have gone from Magic to poker.
Yeah.
There are fewer poker to Magic crossovers, but obviously there's a ton of overlap in skills in both of them.
There are, yeah. And I think that's mainly for monetary because I think a lot of people get really good at Magic and then they eventually have somebody go, hey, you could take most of those skills and turn it into a game with a higher ceiling as far as income goes. And they go, okay, I'll do that. And I was in the other way, but when I found Magic, it was way more fun than poker, right? It's just a more interesting, intricate game. And it's played, in poker, we call it heads up, right? Where you're playing one-on-one. In poker, you play at a table with 8, 9, sometimes 10 people at it. And to play correctly, you have to fold a lot. You just don't play very much. But in Magic, there's literally like, if you're not paying attention all the time during your turn and your opponent's turn, you're going to miss stuff. So it's much more engaging mentally to do that. And then I just remember the first pro tour I went to for coverage when I went to Barcelona and I started meeting some of the people and all that. And I was like, okay, this is special. Like this has a different vibe. This is a different group of people. Like this is something that I want to be a part of, for the long term. Also, Gunter says, thanks for the great content and a shout out to my buddy Jamie for pointing me to limited resources and getting me into Magic in the first place, which I started 20 years ago. Thanks, Gunter. Braden says, producer Jeff, I'm heading to Dublin in a few months. Where or how can I order a spice bag?
I knew it. That's where
That's amazing. Jeff, I don't know if you have your mic available, but you can pop on whenever you want and answer the question.
I do. Okay. So I've actually, hilariously, because we're live streaming, as you mentioned before, someone in the chat, Kenji, was just asking about what do you think of this one? There's a chain of places in the city centre called Xi'an Street Food, Xian. They do a very, very good spice bag. Like, I would consider it in the top tier of spice bags. Obviously, most places that serve, well, I say obviously, most places that serve spice bags in Dublin are not like chain places. They're all like independent, kind of like mom and pop Chinese food places. But the one in Xi'an is a good, a very good spice bag if you want to get the spice bag experience and you're in Dublin.
Okay, so when
Luis
that's probably
where we'll go, Luis, next time you're in Dublin.
Yeah, I was going to say, when we come visit you, that's where you're going to take us. So if it's good enough for us, it's good enough for Jeff, and it's going to be good enough for Braden as well. So there you go, Braden.
Yeah, and thank you for the question.
Yeah, you have your rec. Wheatley says, me and my friend just recorded our first episode of our new Constructed Magic podcast. It's called the Stock Up Podcast. We cover the formats for the RC PT schedule, tips for qualifying for the PT, etc. While we are both While we are both Magic veterans, we are conversely podcast noobs. Any tips? What were the successes and failings of constructed resources? Luis, you can start with that one.
We both have recorded constructed resources and then stopped doing so.
Yes, we have. So good question, Wheatley.
So I did a CR. Our run was about a year. It was me and Andrew Beckstrom, BK. And it was great. I had a really good time. We ended up covering, like we kind of would end up in a spot where we were like decks of the week and talk about what's going on in the constructed meta and breaking down decks. And all that was really fun. The reason that we ended up stopping was just both of us were short on time and not playing enough constructed. So we decided that we just didn't want to be doing the podcast anymore. Constructed is interesting because there are some things that are a little bit more difficult when it comes to constructed. And part of it is like, you end up in a spot where like, there are a lot of formats to choose from, but it's a little harder to talk about. Like, you can't do like, crack a pack is a very good thing to do. And it also is very time sensitive. And that can be true for limited too, for sure. I'm not saying it's not, but you have a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to limited, whereas constructed, you really don't. And ultimately, I enjoy playing limited more. So I think that was really the big thing that happened with me. It was like, I just want to play more limited. I don't really want to be playing tons more constructed. So we ended up not doing so.
Yeah,
it was fun when we did it though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a prerequisite that you play a lot of the thing that you're doing. That is a non-negotiable. If Luis and I stop drafting, we wouldn't be able to do the show. It's just we're not going to fake it, and so that you have to do. It sounds like you and your co-host are doing that already. The thing about Magic podcasts for the most part is that they rely on a news cycle of sorts, right? And I don't mean literally news, but some type of information cycle coming out. And, LR is based on that, right? Like our whole process is based on a similar pattern from set to set, right? Where we do set reviews, we do impressions, we do archetype deep dives. And then as the interest in that new set starts to wane, that's when we'll do episodes like this, like Q&A stuff or level ups, that type of thing. And so you'll see that pattern play out over and over again. And that's because that's what's relevant to our listener base, right? Like they want to know what the new cards are. Those are the most popular shows we do are the set review shows, right? Because people want to get ahead of the curve, get an idea for what's going on in the set, and they'll come and listen to those. And you need something like that where there's this constant flow. It could be the PT, right? It could be like, gearing up for that type of stuff. I think the challenges with the constructed base show is finding what's most relevant to the biggest part of your audience. Because for us, that's actually pretty straightforward. It's whatever the set is out at the time, right? So we just came off of Tarkir Dragonstorm. We're going over to Final Fantasy. We already know what we're talking about for the next 3 months. Like we don't have to guess about it. And yes, we can put in some other things. We love talking about Cube on here. We're both very passionate about Cube and think that it's a great thing that more people should do. Luis does videos every day of Cube. So we will talk about Cube, but we save those for when that, burning interest in the new set has waned a little bit. And with constructed, it's kind of like, are you just going to talk about standard the whole time? Are you going to talk about whatever the format is for the upcoming PT? That can be tough. So anyway, I think
the best point you made there, was that limited, your attention is less split than in constructed. There's just a variety of different formats, and you have to figure out how you're going to support each of those ones. I think that's a really good point.
That's really, really tough to do. So that's the problem that you need to solve, Wheatley. And I would ask your audience, I'd say, what do you want to hear about? Because you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to have to go down one road or the other. And that means leaving the other road behind. And you're not going to be able to just be like, we cover all constructed. That's why I think a lot of the constructed shows that have had a good run are a little more refined. They focus on a format like Modern, Pioneer, Standard, something like that, where it's like, I know what I'm getting when I come here. But of course, that limits your audience.
That runs into the drawback of if that format is, in a not great spot, then you end up kind of having to deal with that, and you're pigeonholed a little bit there. So there's trade-offs with everything.
Totally. And, we've gotten lucky. We picked limited. And I mean, for the past many years now, they've just had a really great limited run. Nitpicks aside, I mean, I've gotten on my soapbox about a bunch of different stuff that I would change, but, overall, the sets have been so good that they've really kind of got the formula nailed, and it's just more about tweaking it at this point. But, we've seen constructed formats fall out of favor or just get completely out of whack and have a long stretch of time before a banning could come along to try to fix it. And that could be tough too. Next question comes from Atipong, who says, which Final Fantasy games have you played and which ones do you love?
I played 0 of them. I have
and which ones
good
do you
memories
love?
of my brother playing Final Fantasy VII. So that was pretty cool. Like I remember watching him play a bunch of that. But yeah, this particular Universes Beyond is not really going to be that resonant for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's just not.
That is also true for me, except for that I did play one.
Oh, really?
I did, but I don't remember which one it was. It was probably like 4. Like it was for Super Nintendo. If that,
okay.
I don't know if that narrows it down or because
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, and that's the problem. So both Luis and I are not Final Fantasy nerds. Like we're not into. I really couldn't care less about Final Fantasy. I could probably name you one character or something. Like I just don't know much about it.
More than one. Tifa, Cloud, Sephiroth.
Garrett. Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. So I did play it because I do know all those.
That was fun. I thought that was Final Fantasy VII.
Okay, well,
there's great confusion in the ranks.
Oh, this does look like 4. I think this is the one I played. Huh.
That's funny.
Anyway, but this is when I was in junior high, maybe. So this is like a super long time ago. And that stuff didn't, like, I remember playing Secret of Mana. I really, really like that, which was a similar style of game. But yeah, this is interesting to me because I know that the player base is super excited about this. I've had, some
dealer
predictions.
base seems to be too.
Yeah. And I've had some predictions from, people deep into Magic saying that they think that this could be the best selling set ever. Like that this could just be it.
That's what the Wizards has even said, right? They've said it's already the best selling set ever.
They said that?
Yeah. On pre-orders, it's the best selling set. Not like the pre-orders make them think it's going to be the best selling set. That what they said was based on pre-orders, it is the best selling set ever.
Okay, but they mean if you compare pre-orders across sets, right?
No, they mean the number of pre-orders for Final Fantasy is greater than the number of total sales of any other set.
Are you sure? That's insanity.
That's what they've said. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I don't stand by it as in like, I'm necessarily 100% right.
I guess I would understand that to mean this has sold more pre-orders than any other set, but I guess.
No, I don't think that's what it is though. Wow. I think it is really just that they completely popped off.
Okay. Well, there you go. So, not a prediction, apparently, but yeah, but for Luis and I mean, I'm really excited about a new draft set coming out. I just don't really care who's on the pictures. And also I have to say, Atipong, there is that hanging cloud of this is the departure point.
Yeah.
Right. This is where Magic isn't Magic anymore, and it will not go back from a core fantasy, the kind of stuff that we fell in love with when we were young and found the game. I'm not going to catastrophize it. It can go whatever direction. And like I've said before, I'll play it because I love the game itself. But now there's a hit there I know that the Lord of the Rings set was a step in that same direction. It's just the fantasy elements overlap so much that you don't
Lord
really
of the Rings
notice
doesn't
it.
feel like not Magic.
Right.
And to some degree, Final Fantasy also does feel like Final Fantasy also has some amount of that where like
it does.
There's some things, cards and themes in Final Fantasy that I think feel completely kind of coherent for Magic. We're not talking about the SpongeBob, thing or whatever.
Right.
Like that one does not. But I think that Lord of the Rings, you're not going to find a better IP for Magic, because Lord of the Rings, Magic copied their IP, right? Like,
right, exactly.
It went the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could. I think if you didn't know what Lord of the Rings was, but you were a Magic player and you played that set, you may just not notice. Like, it may just be, oh, this is kind of a cool plane. There's these rings and things like that. Well, you're going to notice with Final Fantasy. Like, you'd be like, what is this? And remember, you're talking to people who, when Ether Drift comes out, I'm kind of rolling my eyes. Right. I'm kind of going, what?
Of the vehicles?
Yeah. And the like drifting or whatever it was. And then, what was it? What was it called? The 3 sets ago with the scary, like the 80s movie, scary stuff. Duskmorn. Right. Which I loved. See, that's
great.
Perfect example of what I'm talking about. That stuff bugged me. I don't want to see TVs and cassette players and stuff in Magic, but I didn't care. I love that set, so that's how Final Fantasy is going to be in SpongeBob, Spider-Man, whatever they come up with next. Jeremy says, hello, Marshall, LSV, and Jeff. I hope all is well with you. I'm so thankful for Paul filling in, but I'm equally glad that you're back, LSV. I hope your family is doing awesome. Marshall, I've come to find that click of reinstalling the mainspring on your videos to be one of the most satisfying sounds ever. It must be even better in person. It is, Jeremy. I would also love to give everyone a podcast recommendation. Riley Knight's Half-Arsed History. He does an excellent job making history both informative and entertaining. He also has recommended Wristwatch Revival on his show, so I thought we should give him some love here on LR. And yes, Riley has turned, it's similar to Wristwatch Revival in the sense that it was like his kind of niche side project, and it's become kind of his main thing. He's a huge, we're talking about Riley Knight, from the coverage team and all that. And he's a huge history buff, and he does a really good job with Half-Arsed History. He has done it for a long time. And I also am a history, like I watch history documentaries on YouTube and stuff like that all the time. And if you like that, you'll definitely like Riley's podcast as well. He says, so do you guys have any good Riley stories?
That we can share on the podcast?
Yeah, sure, on the podcast. I mean, I remember when I first met him, that part was really, really cool. They flew us down to do a GP in Melbourne, which is where he's from. And this was a long time ago. And basically there was an idea, this is when they were ramping up GP coverage, and that they would do 1 to 2 events from Australia per year, but they recognized that it would be too expensive to send a team from North America down there. So what they did instead is they said, well, how about we contract with one of the big game store, content companies down there, and then we'll have an Australian coverage team and they can cover those events. But the thought process was, we'll send down the official coverage team to train them up, to show them how it's done. Rashad can show them how he basically invented streaming of that level and all the tips and tricks that he had. They sent me down to talk to the commentators and do all that. And I met Riley the first time, and it was great. I remember, I'll never forget, he was wearing, they call it a jumper, but like a sweater, like a green Australia, Team Australia jumper. And I just remember how enthusiastic he was. And we got to spend a lot of good time together. And, him and I have been through the trenches on coverage, like few people have, I, a few others, Cedric, like it's just have been in that position, where he was kind of doing all the events over in Europe for a number of years and on the Pro Tour and stuff like that. He has a very strict palate.
Yes, that is like one of the first things I think about Riley. I don't
that's
know what it is about
thing.
coverage. Him and Hagon, they let's just say there's a lot of cheese pizza in their future.
Yeah, and they overlap heavily too. Yeah. So there'd be a lot of dinners with those two. But Riley's doing really good. He's living back in Australia now. He had a stint in Germany and in Scotland as well. But he's back in the sunshine, and we get to have him out at the Pro Tours as well. Sometimes he's in the booth, And sometimes he's interviews, and sometimes he hosts the main stage at the Magic Cons as well. And he does a great job at all that stuff. Jeremy also says, I really enjoyed your Sunset show. This set has some truly unique quirks to it. I found drafting the 5-color decks and playing them out a lot more interesting in person at my local game store than I did on Arena. So maybe you need to experience that, the set that way, Marshall. Yeah, maybe I do. I never drafted this set live. I draft live very infrequently these days. What are your guys' favorite LGSs that you've played at, and what made them special to you? Thanks for your many years of dedication to putting out this awesome show. I truly appreciate you guys. Thank you, Jeremy. And you always ask such great questions. What are your favorite LGSs? Did you came up at, what was it called? Pneumonia? Or no, not Pneumonia.
So Eudaimonia was a long-running LGS in Berkeley. I was there the day it opened, and unfortunately, it had a really good run. I think it closed a couple years ago, but it opened and had to be like 2005 and probably lasted until 2018 or something, or 2020. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It was one of those card stores that got me into Magic for sure, or tournament Magic. That's where I'd go play the vintage tournaments. The store that really got me into Magic was the End Zone back in Davis, California. That eventually closed in part because the owner stole money from the register and told his business partner he got robbed.
Whoa.
Stuff like that.
That's intense.
But that's where I met a bunch of my roommates from college, and we played a ton of Magic, and that was awesome. Really fond memories of that place. And then C&J's over in San Leandro, which also closed by now. So all the stores I've spent the most at, like my local game store days are kind of behind me, but I've made it out to the Wizard's Chest here in Denver. It's a really cool place. Also like a literal magic shop. Like they have like costumes and magic props and stuff like that. And then like Game Heroes over in Arvadas runs good tournaments, and I've been there a few times. So yeah, there's definitely some places though. My local game store is now my office. I'm sitting in it. So that's where I play my Magic,
Yeah, I feel that same way. But, I think back when I first started playing Magic, the local game store where I lived out here just north of Seattle, what's called World of Collections. I think it's still there. And there's a guy named Jeff that ran it, and he did a great job with that. He was super friendly. He always ran events. He always wanted to keep Magic drafts going as much as he could. And that's also where I met Kenji Egashira, that Kenji. And I
just drafted with him today.
Did you really?
He was in the Vintage Cube server. Yeah. We were on the same team. I rinsed, as did he. We won easily.
Oh, I like that combo. Yeah. But he, at the time though, he was away at college. So he would come back from college and show up at that game store and just wipe the floor with us. And it was, who is that guy? Like I thought I was the good player by that point, in the store, and he would just come up and clean house and then leave. And eventually I'm like, who is he? Like, he's so good. Yeah. And it turned out he was just playing Magic online while he was at college the whole time and just coming home and beating up on us noobs at the local game store. So World of Collections is one. And then the other one, arguably the best game store going is Mox Boarding House. And, this podcast was sponsored by Card Kingdom at that time. And Card Kingdom's the one who built both of them. There's 2 stores here in the greater Seattle area called the Mox and Mox Boarding House. And these are like high-end, awesome. Seriously, they have like restaurant.
One of the things
with
I'm most jealous
food.
about for people who live in Seattle is the ability to go to Mox Boarding House. That's a cool place.
It is so sweet. Gaming, a place to play Magic. There's a whole tournament area. Food that's actually good. Like the 2 owners, they're brothers, and they're great at what they do. They just really get it. And they built. We were still sponsored by them when they were just starting to build the first Mox Boarding House. And we got to do a little tour of her when it was still like in shambles, over here's going to be the, that kind of stuff. And I just remember thinking like, wow, these guys are really going for it. And that was like 10 years ago. And I drive by it on my way to the office now. It's still there and going strong. So yeah, if you're ever in Seattle, there's one in Bellevue and one in Seattle, but they're just the best, the game store you can go to. Daniel says, hey, Marshall and Luis, I've loved your discussions on thinking of processes over results and how learning that in Magic can also be applied to life. How do you find the balance between focusing on the process, living your life, versus the things that, quote, optimize the process, like setting goals or deciding what to incorporate into your process of life? You both strike me as very driven people, so I'm tempted to think that this isn't an issue for you, but I know I've had times where following the process has led to a feeling of just floating through life without much direction. Love the magic content and the life updates. Thanks for all you do. Great question, Daniel. What do you think?
I'm kind of confused. Can you explain what?
So he said, how do you find the balance between focusing on the process of life versus things that optimize that process? Meaning,
I see.
Just doing the thing versus putting your time towards like, well, I should be doing this, or, putting all the effort into trying to make it optimal.
Yeah, I mean, the old saying, like the measure twice, cut once, or whatever. When you're doing woodworking, like you really want to try to be as precise as possible. I would say that's not exactly how I end up, running things, but I do think that there is something to taking your time to try to make sure you're doing things the right way. It is a balance. I mean, it really is. I think that I try to at least understand in my life when I'm doing something with a bad process, but sometimes you got to do it to get by. And honestly, you do it a lot with kids, right? Like with kids, you're constantly in a spot of like, okay, I know that the best way to do it is this way, but I don't have the time or energy, or I really have to get us out the door, so I'm going to do it this way. Like a good example would be like if, Santi, our 3.5-year-old, he wants to take a snack up at bedtime, and it's something we're really trying to stop. But because we want to finish eating downstairs, go up to bed, no more snacks. We're going to brush teeth. We're going to bed. So have eaten everything you're going to eat before you go to bed. So what we really want to avoid is the like, okay, it's time to tuck you in. Like, oh, I'm actually hungry. Can I get a snack?
Right.
Which obviously he's going to run if we let him. So there, the kind of the challenge is when do we kind of like hold the line versus when do we end up in like kind of giving in? And in an ideal world, we would never give in, but sometimes it's like, oh, okay, the twins need something. We got to get him to bed. All right, we're going to have to like not necessarily have a big tantrum here and make a compromise. And you just have to kind of balance it because it is tough. Like you don't want, you want to do the right thing. You want to have the right process. You have to understand that life isn't quite that neat. And sometimes you will not be able to do that. You will have to settle for doing something that's not as optimal.
Yeah. For me, I try to really ask myself if the fundamentals are in place, and I'll let the details slide a lot. Because I think you can really get down in the weeds about stuff that just isn't going to end up impacting things. And as long as you're doing the basics, as long as you're, doing the thing that you need to do, it's more about that than it is about getting every single thing perfect or whatever. Most of the time, if you try an endeavor, and you fall off of it and you look back, the thing you'll notice is that you were doing the thing at that time and not that you were doing it in this very specific way that was perfect, right? And that's the difference, because when you're in a rhythm where you're actually doing the thing that you want to do, whether it's a goal thing, like you want to get healthy, you want to make more money, you want to, get out of the house more and develop relationships or whatever it is, the fact that you're just doing that at all is what's actually working for you. And when you stop doing it, when that isn't part of your routine and when that feels really hard and like a big daunting task, is when you realize that the game was won when you decided and actually did the thing that you're trying to do. And it wasn't won by like, well, I could have optimized for, it's like, you're doing the thing. If you want to save money, if you're taking money from your checking account and you're routinely putting it into your savings or investment account or whatever it is, that's the key. That's the main thing, right? And it's the people who don't do that you can't make any steps from there. You can often course correct after as well. So I would say just, make sure you're doing the big stuff right, Daniel. And the details, sure, you can put some effort into them, but don't take for granted, when you got something good going with the big stuff that you're doing it right. Swordsman says, great content as always from what I consider the LR team. And yes, I'm including Paul Sierkiewicz and producer Jeff in that group. Fair enough. I'm concerned about the limited environment for the upcoming Universes Beyond Marvel sets. Wizards is going to have cards with different names and art for Arena versus the real life set. I did not know that. With Arena being...
I forget how...
You're supposed to tell me this stuff. You have one job.
Well, okay, so it's pretty easy. Let me explain it. Basically, they can't they couldn't make an online licensing deal. Like, you know how like some of the cards like can't be in the vintage cube, for example, like because they don't have the license for them. Like the Universes Beyond thing doesn't span both paper and online.
Oh.
In order to make it so the formats are the same, and I think a big part of it is because of Marvel Snap, they won't let them print the Marvel cards online. So there's going to be a Spider-Man in the Marvel set, and let's say it's awesome, and it's tuna, red, whatever. Do a spider thing. He's not even really red. But online, there's going to be like Arachnid Flyer, and it's going to be the same card. I know you're going to love that. I'm surprised you hadn't heard about that. That's awesome.
So I actually had, but it was in a slightly different context, and I didn't realize that it applied to Arena.
Yep.
I had heard about it for Magic Online, but not Arena. Wow.
I assume you're in.
That is horrendous. Are you kidding me? So Swordsman continues, with Arena being a big onboarding tool for new players, how can we as a community help newer players make that adjustment as they sit down for their first drafts? Bonus question, if the Arena version of the cards don't sell well, fewer gems spent buying packs or drafting, do you think there's any chance Hasbro revisits the decision? Swordsman, your brain went to the same place mine did. That is, man, really? They just were like, this must be, they must have this on a similar level to the Final Fantasy stuff or whatever, where they're just like, we're willing to put up with anything to get this through. Cause like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yes, that's a huge concern, Swordsman. I mean, people,
it's really something.
I mean, imagine just like even somebody who plays, casually or whatever, and it's like, oh, cool, the new Magic set's out, which is, most casual players pop up when the new set comes out. They'll do some drafts, they'll get a few cards together, maybe update their commander deck, play for a while, and then it kind of dies down, and then they come back again. And imagine if they're like, go to the store and, the person at the store is like, hey, this, Marvel set's out. Oh, cool. Okay. And they buy some cards and whatever. And then they're like, I'm going to go play it on Arena. Like, not even from a confusion standpoint, just from a wait, this isn't here. Like, this isn't, I came here for that. And Arachnid Jumper Man isn't quite what I was hoping for.
It's really funny though.
So, by the way, Nate follows up and says, double bonus question. When the cards have two names, are you prepared to say both the paper and digital names each time you talk about a card? Next card is the Amazing Spider-Man, which is called the Arachno Hero of Thraben in digital. Oh my God, dude. I mean, I know I'm not really on Twitter anymore, and I miss a lot of the upcoming stuff because of that, because I used to just absorb that stuff from the chatter on there. And that's a cost that I have had to pay to not be on Twitter, but just for personal reasons, I'm willing to pay it, even though it is annoying, I'm sure, but this is ridiculous. Well, Swordsman, I appreciate the question, and I have the same concerns that you do. That does not seem like a good experience.
I didn't think about that. So when we do the set review of Marvel, what are we going to do? I guess we'll have to figure it out.
God, I don't know. Wait till SpongeBob or whatever.
Do you think they'll do as a Magic player? I do kind of like it as an agent of chaos, but
it does make me laugh and go, okay, this is going to get very real. Yeah. Nate says, same Nate with follow-up question, by the way, says, do you ever try the really off-the-wall limited formats on Magic Online and Arena? Recently, MTGO had a Cons of Tarkir progressive sealed, which I thought was a pretty fun way to play sealed. Now they're running Commander Cube. I'm not really sure who is the intended audience, since it uses a card pool of casual Commander to play in play-to-win multiplayer formats with long, grindy games. Are there other non-traditional limited formats that you really enjoy and suggest trying? I kind of approach these type of things the same way I do with the build around cards that I'm skeptical of, which is the prove it style, where I'm like, you need to beat me with that card and then I'll start drafting it. But until I see people winning with it, I'm too skeptical to try it myself. That's kind of how I feel about these. I don't really have any interest in weird stuff, but like Ryan's really good at coming up with these type of formats. So if he tells me, hey, this is really interesting and I think you'd like it, then I'm more likely to do it. If you ever told me, Luis, hey, I've been playing this, it's cool. I'd be more likely to do it. But if I see it on my screen, I'm like almost 0% to do any. I don't play alchemy. I don't play any of the extra stuff. I even have a hard time when they just bring a set that I actually played before back for a short period of time to get excited about it, because I feel like I'm best when I'm kind of focused on one set at a time, and that's usually the main set that's going. So no, not really my thing. Nate, what about you, Luis? Or do you ever try out the off the wall
I mean,
stuff?
I'll play the Arena Cube when it's on Arena because I generally find that to be enjoyable. Mm-hmm. But I'm not actually a big fan of Chaos Draft. Like at that point, I'd rather just cube. Mm-hmm. And that's honestly the answer to a lot of the questions in my life. Like at that point, I'd rather just cube. So totally. I think that Chaos Draft can certainly be fun. But part of it, honestly, is like I feel in a lot of cases, the competition isn't that high because it's kind of a casual format to begin with as well.
Right.
So that is a little less fun for me. I mean, I like playing really, exciting matches and close matches, and that's not always been my experience, like arena chaos drafting, for example.
Yeah, a big part of the enjoyment that I get out of playing Magic is that I understand like the first few drafts that I do of a new set, I'm always like trying to get myself acclimated as quickly as possible for various reasons, but mainly because I have so much more fun when it's more about the intricacies, the depth, the subtle decisions in a format rather than just understanding, what's good and what's not. That, of course, is the first goal when we start, but I like to get through that part about as quickly as possible. Guillaume says, Hi, both love the show and have nothing but admiration for your consistency and values. Thank you. Luis, can you describe what happened to turn you from a constructed major 7-drop slingers into a hardcore vegetables limited aficionado? I would guess taking Cedric Phillips money in the team drafts. Conversely, Marshall, what would it take at this point to get you into constructed? I don't have any guess.
Yeah, I think constructed is going to be a tough sell for Marshall, to be honest.
Yeah, it would have hit by now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. But I don't actually know what there wasn't like one sort of incident or anything. The incident. It's mostly that I just played a lot more. As I played both kinds of Magic a lot, I was like, I'm having a lot more fun in limited. Limited's way better. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I ended up. But yeah. It's obviously like you can like whatever you like. I think limited is a lot more fun. I think it's just got so much going for it.
Yeah, the times when I've gotten into constructed was back in the day when I was playing PTQ, so I kind of had a need to do it. And then, but particularly when I enjoyed it was when I found a deck that I really liked, like that suited my play style. Like, remember that rug deck, the Delver with like Tarmogoyfs and stuff?
Oh yeah.
That's my jam. Guillaume has another question. This is funny too. Guillaume says, when can we get Let's Stomp Vargas again? Which is a common mishearing, I guess. It is Let's Stump Vargas, as in
there will be no stomping.
We do not stomp. Side questions, ridiculous card names from the top of your head that still make you laugh to this day. The ones that I think of are always the stupid, like river wheel aerialists, like ones that I'm like, are you like, is there somebody in that building who wants to see if I can say this on camera at the Pro Tour numerous times and just trying to make it hard? And by the way, Luis, I wanted to mention this to you. We did have that kind of elaborate sign off that was it Alex
Werner. Yeah.
Had awesome sent in. So you guys had followed up and I did look and the document is blank. So we might need to just reach out. You should
follow up with him because I'm not supposed to know about it.
Yeah, I know you don't want to actually see the thing, but I just, I did actually follow up with that because I was like, oh yeah, we were going to do that when you got back. But for some reason the Google Doc didn't show up. Ridiculous card names, Luis?
For me, Manor Skeleton from Original Innistrad, because, well, it begs the question, is it a man or is it a skeleton?
It's a philosophical Magic card. Alex says, over the last few years, Wizards has tried a number of mechanics and card packages for both card flow and mana fixing. Which have been the best for each? What does that tell us about approaching new formats like Final Fantasy? They have done a lot of stuff. Aren't they all kind of the same, though?
I mean, the most common implementation is a cycle of 2-color tap lands at common, and that generally works well. I think if you added that, whether or not they are snow or they gain a life or they count as those types, each set has its own quirks as to like why it does a certain thing. In MH3, they're indestructible artifact lands, for example. But the baseline of just coming to play taps for both colors land at common, every set works pretty well with that. Like if you have that plus a couple other things, then you can end up with like tons of mana fixing. But Foundations, for example, had a cycle of those at common, and it felt like a good amount. It wasn't too much. It's not like actually the 10 of those plus an Evolving Wilds is the most common. And if they have a good cycle of artifacts, if they have uncommon lands, I mean, Tarkir had it all. It had uncommon artifacts, uncommon lands. It had all of the common lands, and then green had like Saga Wildling, it had the Aenoch Wayfarer, and then there was the Globe, a really powerful 5-color fixer. So you add all that together, and we're talking a lot of fixing. But most sets, if you just honestly, if they just dropped the 10 gain land or 10 tap lands plus an Evolving Wilds into every single set, I think that would usually be fine. You can assume that you can play 2 colors, obviously, but you can sometimes splash a third. And if they go a little higher than that, sometimes you can play 3 colors a little more consistently.
Shivam says, in old limited formats, it was pretty easy to figure out what to cut to get to 23 playables. In modern limited, where everything is playable and your 20 to 26 picks are all roughly equivalent, how do you decide what stays and what goes? Too often I end up with 45 cards in my final deck and just kind of play the first round to figure out what actually works. No, Shivam, no.
Shivam knows he's not supposed to be doing that, but...
is he trolling us right now? Like, 45?
I mean, you can do that, and honestly, you're not going to even see that big of a difference. You could play 42 cards in your entire limited format, and you'll never, actively notice, oh man, I drove my bomb a little bit less. My colors are slightly less consistent, but that is what the effect is. So you shouldn't do it. You really got to make some cuts. Ask someone else, ask a friend, ask Twitter, whatever. But 45, you know that's not right.
Yeah, I think the easy answer, Shivam, is curve, right? Make curve based cuts. Because if you're saying power level wise, they're kind of a wash, so you're having a hard time differentiating there, which I totally get, then you should go down the list because that would be your number one consideration in most cases. But number 2 is curve. Number 3 is castability. Could you cut 4 of those cards and they all are the same color and you can balance out your colors better or skew it more towards one color or the other if that's where you were wanting to go with it? Again, if these are roughly equal in power level, then that might be, a direction that you'd want to go for the tiebreaker on what to cut. Generally speaking, very, very generally speaking, cut the more expensive stuff. Make your curve lower if possible. If you have 5 cuts to make and you're looking down at the 1 and 2 drop and you're again kind of equalizing these cards for power level, you should be looking towards the other end of the curve. Start cutting 5s, 6s, even 4s, and your decks will be more consistent over time if you find yourself in that situation. Thanks, Stephen, for the question. Marco says, how feasible is it to go infinite on drafts and arena, but never have to actually buy gems? How often do you guys need to stock up, if ever? Do you know what the answer is for Paul or Kenji or others who are regularly at high mythic? Oh, it's very feasible. Paul and Kenji never, ever buy gems.
I mean, the ham has hundreds of thousands of gems or something like that, a ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
I buy gems all the time.
I actually do too. It's usually because of arena opens, because
it's exclusively because of arena opens. For me.
I said, I'll build up gems and gold going to the next one. And then I'll just, like I said, the last one was pretty typical. It took me 3 tries, right? That's my average is probably 3-ish. But I mean, I've had 7, I've had 9 or whatever where I didn't make it, that's a lot of money. Like I rip right through all those gems and then I have to do the walk of shame to the gem store, but I mean, I'm vaguely positive in the regular ones, but really good players like Luis, Kenji, Paul, they're clearing it no problem.
Yeah, I don't go infinite because of the arena opens. Like I don't typically need to buy gems between opens. Like my normal drafting cadence is pretty good. But when it comes to opens, the other thing is, and you've seen me do this, when I open a mediocre or bad pool in the open, I'll like play 1 or 2 rounds and then just drop. I just don't really have an interest in trying to going 4 and 3 because I know my pool isn't good. So I do end up buying more entries on average, but spending less time on average, compared to the other routes I could have taken there.
Right. Next question comes from Fizzerdrix, who says, hard-hitting question here. What is the best taco and why is it a traditional al pastor?
Well,
kind of nailed it.
If traditional, you mean like the street taco kind of style of like 2 corn tortillas griddled a little bit. Then you just have straight up meat on top, and that's just how it's served to you. And then you put on cilantro, onions, salsa if you want it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the best one. Squeeze a lime. I like carne asada more than pastor or a crispy carnitas, but it has to be crispy. They have to like have the last step of like
flat grill,
frying it on the skillet, so that it's actually crispy. I typically don't put cheese or beans or anything like that on my tacos because I just like I think the combination of onion, cilantro, salsa, and meat is just perfect. You don't really need anything else.
Yeah, and for me, it is al pastor. Everything that Luis said, agree. The one thing that I would say is what they call it, like the vertical spit thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like what they make a kebab on. Basically.
It's like that, but they do the pastora.
And they put a pineapple on top, and then like boom,
one,
yeah,
that one. That's
al pastor. That's my brother's favorite as well.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like spicy red pork, basically.
Right, and they cut it right off into the taco. It's like, oh my god, I'm hungry now, and I just ate. James says, do you listen to any other Magic podcasts? If not, what Magic content do you consume? LR will always be my number one, but I got to shout out Mengu's workshop for the variety of awesome formats he brings to the table.
Mengu. I'm a big Mengu fan. I like Andrea. He's a cool dude. I always make fun of him because I bought a drop of honey from him for a Legacy Grand Prix like 7 years ago, and now it's gone up quite a bit. Just normal Magic player things. Because he always buy high, never sell is the Mengu finance way. He just buys 4 of every card and never sells them.
And just grabs on forever.
The only Magic podcasts I've historically listened to were when like there was like some kind of like community or drama thing, especially when it came to pro play. When those chuckleheads were doing the Pro Points podcast, it was like Siggy, Paulo, and Sam Black, because I like know those guys and I know what they're talking about and all that. But I don't really listen to podcasts. That's just not the kind of medium that I frequent. I like to read. I like reading articles. I like reading books. I like reading tweets. I don't typically watch videos or listen to podcasts. They're too slow. I need to be faster. I need more action.
Yeah, and I do. I listen to both podcasts and videos basically all day. Like it's
you certainly don't listen to Magic podcasts.
No, I don't. I used to, but there came a point, especially when I was doing full-time coverage, this show, writing articles every week, where I realized that like just through the course of my normal kind of working, that I was absorbing a ton of Magic content. And at that point I said, well, I don't want to be all Magic all the time, no matter what. So I started branching out and, with my other hobbies and interests and stuff and kind of trying to focus that because I knew I would get enough and I didn't want to get burned out. But that being said, like I watch Luis's videos, I watch Paul's videos, Kenji stream sometimes, like Reed stream. I mean, random Magic pros when they stream, I'll watch that kind of stuff. I like live stuff or recorded live stuff.
I'll watch live streams. I'll watch the Ham. I'll watch Cheon. I'll watch the Magic broadcast when that's on. So I like doing that. But I'll have you know, when you and Chian are doing commentary, I don't even mute you. So
Wow. Thank you.
a greater compliment I'll never pay you.
I'm telling you, if you ever talk to like a grizzled Magic veteran of the Pro Tour and they tell you I don't mute you when you're on commentary, that is the best gift they can give you. Stanley says, hello, Marshall and Luis. Would you be interested in an NBA Universes Beyond set? What existing mechanics do you think would lend themselves well to basketball themed Magic?
Well, Reach is pretty good.
Reach is good. Reach is really good. Flying, right?
Flying,
for people that
some
can
guys who could
jump
definitely
really
fly.
high. Yeah. Would I be interested? I mean, it's so funny because this is like a ludicrous question that, of course, I would never be interested in this actually happening. And it has never felt more possible.
Sorry, you can't remand LeBron James. He's actually uncounterable.
Yeah.
Steph Curry is definitely unblockable.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Steph Curry's like a 5-1 unblockable, and you know, when he hits, draw 2 cards or something like that.
Totally.
But
So
yeah,
I know I don't want this.
No, I don't really want this.
I
actually,
don't want this.
I mean, there are some things like the Avatar Magic set. I'm super hyped for. I love Avatar. It's a great property. It's a great world. The characters are awesome, and it will translate into Magic really well. Casting, Uncle Eero or whatever, or like a fireball that has a picture of Zuko on it, or some sort of air blast that has Aang on it. That all sounds perfectly great. It doesn't sound as good for me to be like, all right, well, I've got my Javal McGee card here. It's like it must attack if able, and it has to be blocked or whatever.
When it attacks, roll a dice. It might fall down or something. Oh man, yeah, but no. The answer is no. I'm not interested in that. I love basketball. I love Magic, but I don't need everything to be a crossover. Morgan says, what is your take on getting creative in the cube construction process? Brandon Sanderson did an episode of Game Nights, and Morgan says, I know, Commander, where he had special cards in the draft. I thought this was cool and adapted it to my vintage cube. So I have a draft set of Cloud Post where if you draft the card, you get 3 copies of Cloud Post. Okay. I also have with a combo of Devoted Druid and Swift reconfiguration, both playable in cube, but by no means broken on their own, but it adds some spice to Celestia. I think this kind of thing needs to be kept to a minimum to retain the experience, but what do you think? You ever do any of that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, I built the Retro Cube.
Does it have things like stipulation level cards where if you draft this and you get 3 of them, or...
No, but we do have Cogwork Librarian in our vintage cube. Like that's the one where if you pick it, you get to then put it back later to take 2 cards of the same pack. Twice so far, I've gotten to put it back and take 2 power out of a pack. That's a good feeling.
That's nice.
And we've talked about like our paper cube has like Blast from the Past, and Arcane Savant, like some cards that don't really work online. And I think I wouldn't be opposed to like a stipulation where, like I've heard of cubes where like you draft Squadron Hawk, you get 3 more Squadron Hawks or whatever, that sort of thing. Or some that are like you draft Splinter Twin, you get Deceiver Exarch. That actually doesn't sound that fun. But I think honestly, you are the designer of the cube. You are the creator of that universe. You should try to figure out the gameplay experiences you and your friends and the people you're going to be cubing with want to have, and what's fun. And while yes, it's your cube, you can make it as fun as crazy as you want or however you want. You do have to play it with other people. If they don't find it fun, they're not going to play it. One of my first cubes, actually, back when I first started cubing, literally about 20 years ago in college, me and Jeff Huang, a good friend of mine, you've met Fob before.
I have.
He still talk to him to this day. And I actually sent him one of those Pro Tour Jaces, that special one, just for his cube. Because he asked if he could buy it. I was like, no, but I'll send it to you. We had, in his cube that we both kind of worked on, Rebels was the theme, and Rebels was errata. So Rebels were like the creatures, like there's Amru Scout. 2 mana, 2/1, 4-tap, look for a 3 mana Rebel and put it into play from your deck. Well, we had eroded other cards to be Rebels. Like Oblivion Ring counted as a Rebel. It just said Rebel on the type line. They had like used it, like a nice pen to do that. There's a couple other cards too. And the goal was to make white better. This is back when white was really bad, and white and black both had the option of like searching out some cards that weren't actually rebels in like literal Magic, but we had eroded them for this cube to be rebels. And I think that could be interesting. It was pretty fun. It was a good
also
thing to
self-explanatory, right? Like it says on the card.
Generally pretty easy. But at the end of the day, if the people you're playing with don't find it fun, you're not going to find people to play it with. So you do have to balance that. Your audience does matter too. You're not the only person making decisions.
Yeah, and I agree. Morgan, I think the key, you really nailed it when you said, I think this kind of thing needs to be kept to a minimum to retain the experience. Just the fact that you're aware of that dynamic means I think you should do what you think is the most fun, because you're not the type of person who's going to let it get crazy where somebody comes into your cube and just goes, I have no idea what's going on here. Like, well, I feel like I have to ask 5 questions.
You get to change things pretty easily from testing. Let's say you tried some of the conspiracies that you just made them draftable, right? Like from the conspiracy set where it's like, you draft this and now you have an emblem that your land's tapped for any color or whatever. Put those in. If they're not fun, just take them out. Like that's generally like one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal as a designer of anything, whether it's games, cubes, fans, like sandals, like anything you could make and requires a design, is iteration. And the best way to see if the sandal you made is comfortable is to make it and wear it. And if it's not comfortable, change it. If the cube is fun, well, great. You've identified some fun. Let's keep building on it. The best way to do that, do some cubes and be like, this conspiracy is pretty lame. I don't enjoy playing this one. This one wasn't very fun, or this is too good. And this is kind of how we ended up like cutting Demonic Consultation and Time Vault from my vintage cube, where, yeah, those cards are clearly powerful enough. They're legal in the sense that they're legal Magic cards. They're one of the few cards we've cut because we don't think they're fun enough. And part of that is playing it. Though we also draft plenty in a cube that has those. So, it comes and it goes. But yeah, I would say try more stuff. The crazier, the better. You're trying to do cool experiences. And when you're playing cube at your house with your friends, you can curate it and have all these weird rules. It plays a little less good if you're like at a convention or a card store and you're like, all right, I'm going to bust out the cube, but let me explain to you the 15 minutes of rules. That's part of why I didn't have initiative in my cube. So many like lapsed Magic players play that I don't want. It's just so embarrassing. They pick up White Plume Adventure, like, so what does this do? And I'm like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We don't need to torment poor Raptor who hasn't touched a Magic card in 3 years or whatever.
Right.
When he comes over to cube.
Yeah. And that's really what Morgan's covering with that last statement about knowing that it needs to be kept to a minimum. Okay, we're just about out of time here, so there's a couple of short ones that I wanted to get to. We'll have to skip, unfortunately, just a few questions. But this one comes from Luke, who says, hey guys, love the show. Give me your best grilled cheese recipe.
So the one that I tend to use, and I make a decent amount of grilled cheeses these days for the kids, is I like sourdough bread because it holds up nicely. Mm-hmm. I'll start to heat up a pan to medium. Ideally, you have soft butter, just like room temperature butter. If you don't, that's fine. But if you do, then I'll spread it on each side of the bread and make sure the sides of the bread are aligned so that when you flip them over, they'd be on top of each other in the right orientation. You don't want to get it wrong there. And you butter the part that you're going to put down on the pan. And then I'll put like a slice of cheese on each side. Let them cook for a little bit. Flip them to combine them. Usually put a little more butter in the pan. And then I'll cover the pan and let it cook that way. It melts the cheese a little bit better.
Okay.
And then you start doing the thing where you take the spatula and you kind of press it down and make sure you got the right nice crisp on it. Mm-hmm. And you flip it and then you cut it in half and that in triangles.
Kind of cheese?
Typically just like mild cheddar. That's going to be that's what the kids like the most. If I'm going to make one for like an adult who wants something a little bit more adventurous, sometimes I'll throw in some pepper jack, or if I've got like a stronger cheese, like it actually works pretty well. But I would say the kids just get Colby Jack or mild cheddar like 90% of the time. I mean,
yeah,
that's what they're into. And I don't make as many grilled cheeses as I do quesadillas, but the kind of concept is basically the same.
Yeah.
Quesadilla, just a bonus. I will use olive oil, put in the tortilla, sprinkle it with cheese, and then I make my quesadillas one tortilla each, and then just fold them and then flip them a few times, as opposed to taking a whole tortilla, putting a second tortilla on top after you put cheese. I find it just comes out better. And if I want to make that, I'll just make 2 of the way I make it, and then I'll end up.
Do you just put cheese on half of it then and then fold the top over, or do you let the cheese melt?
No, I put cheese on the whole thing and let it melt a little, and that way when I fold it over, it's got a good seal. And quesadillas are great, just like grilled cheese. You can throw in other stuff. Sometimes I'll throw in some scrambled eggs or whatever if I've got those, that sort of thing.
For me, there's 2 different kinds of grilled cheese that I make because The funny part is that when I was growing up, that was my favorite thing my mom made, which was a grilled cheese sandwich and top ramen. Like that was my absolute favorite. Like we didn't really have any money. And looking back, I was like, oh, that wasn't really like the all-time best food, but whatever. I loved it. And I still do to this day. And for that one, I actually make it in the toaster oven, which is a little bit weird, but it works, which is that you take bread, just whatever bread, usually, whatever you happen to have, and you put butter on the outside, and then you put one piece with the butter side down into the toaster oven, and then you put the cheese on, and then you put the other one on, and you only have to give it one flip, and it actually comes out really nice, and it doesn't need a pan. So that's kind of the old school nostalgic way. But after I started getting more into cooking, I'm a big fan, and Luis is too, of Kenji Lopez Alt in his books and videos. Yeah, no, not quite that far. But he had a video on YouTube where he said how to make like a pretty good one. And I followed that numerous times, and it is excellent. So you can get Japanese white bread. It's called shokupan, and it's just white bread. It's like
the milk bread, right?
It's like a milk bread. It's thick and it's very refined. And then what he does, and what I copied and is excellent, is a little bit of butter in the pan, and just get just the ever so slightest browning going on that side. Take it out, and then put the cheese on that side that you just lightly browned. And that gives you a little bit more flavor from the butter and stuff, but you're only using a little bit on that side, but also it gets a head start on the cheese getting melted. He uses a combination of American cheese plus a cheddar, or really whatever you want.
I know that some actual great cooks like American cheese because of its meltiness properties. Like they use it for smash burgers and grilled cheeses and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I love it on a smash burger. For this though, it's a combination of that plus another cheese, and so you're kind of getting the meltiness, but the flavor, because that stuff doesn't have that much flavor, and you're getting the good flavor from like a better cheese. So you use both. You don't have to use a lot. It's just you are using a combination of those two things. And then the only other difference is it's butter in a pan, set it down, put the other one on top, butter in the pan again, and then put it down. But he does it slowly, like medium low, and really kind of just let it come around.
That's a big secret to cooking a lot of things. Like you'll have better scrambled eggs if you cook them on like low for a longer time. It's slower, but it does come out better. It's just, I mean, if you think about it, it's less brute force. You're not blasting them. And part of I think the reason he probably cooks them slow is the kind of bread you're describing will burn if you cook it too high, but you want the cheese to melt. That's why I actually use I cover it sometimes just to make the cheese melt a little without overcooking the bread. Exactly.
So and are you a cut diagonal or corner to corner?
Definitely cut diagonal. It's actually scientifically proven to be more enjoyable.
It is much better to do that. Yeah. and that is the best grilled cheese I've ever made. The last thing I do is I do put just a tiny bit of salt on the top, just where the butter was. 'Cause that type of bread can be a little bit on the almost sweet side. It's so, it's so refined and carby, but that does make an absolutely stellar grilled cheese. Like it is. Yeah, it is crazy good. Last question comes from Joe. What's a recent accomplishment you've had in a non-magic related hobby? I feel like Joe's setting me up here, Luis. I got to 1 million subs on the YouTube channel.
Oh, there we go. That's much better than anything I could come up with.
There's my non-magic related hobby accomplishment for the day. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's hard to top. I'm going to go with Gabby was gone for the weekend at a bachelorette party, and I managed all 4 kids, and they all got sick. So
wow.
That was
your hobby choice is suspect, but
not
nice
a hobby
job.
Exactly, but
nice job.
I felt accomplished, and I got to say I had a lot of help. So my parents were visiting, and we BK came to hang out. Caroline took the kids at one point, like the older ones. So
yeah,
it takes a village.
It takes a village is the theme. Okay, Luis, let's call it a show there. Great questions as always from everybody on Patreon. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for sending those in. We should be good to go for the set review next week. The set should be out at the end of this week fully, and then we'll be up and running shortly after that. If you want to find us on social media, Marshall_LR and Luis's LSV, you can find everything related to the show over at lrcast.com. We want to thank once again everybody on Patreon who asks questions and who supports us, as well as Ultimate Guard for their support of the show. That is going to do it for this one. We will see you next week.
So, Marshall, I'm sure you didn't hear, but there was a CDH tournament this last week where the final game was 10 turns long. How many hours do you think it took? I'm even giving you a little bit of a clue.
I was going to say half of 1 hour.
Half an hour?
Half of 1 hour.
Have you never met CDH players or heard of the format at all? Or Magic players? This is the finals of a 4-player tournament.
It's okay. So it's 10 turns times 4.
10 turn cycles. So like, 4 players.
Well, then I would up it to 3.
More.
I went big.
Go again?
5?
More.
No way. 10, 6,
Keep going.
7?
Keep going.
9?
Keep going.
No way. Is it above 10?
It sure is.
Oh my God. 13.
Okay. You finally got there. It was 11. 11 hours, and it ended in a draw because one of the players had to leave to catch a flight, which presumably shouldn't have been an issue because the last game took half a day and their flight was the next day.
Oh my God. What happened?
And obviously this was a failure on the part of the judges / TOs for letting this happen and the players for kind of putting themselves in this position. But apparently the stacks were all complicated. There's infinite people, like there's infinite just drawing and drawing and drawing because that's what CDH is. And it makes me think of this Venn diagram. And look, I want to be very clear here that I'm not saying CDH as a format necessarily sucks. This incident did. You cannot defend an 11-hour tournament that, by all accounts, because there's video, though I'm not going to watch it, obviously, was filled with like players like bullying other players and just like the worst conversations I'm sure you can think of, you know. And the guy who had to leave to get a flight apparently was arguing that he should get a win instead of having the game be a draw. And like, but think of a Venn diagram, right? The overlapping circles. And you've got tournaments, and you've got board games, and you've got Magic, and you have multiplayer. And it's like, and right sitting in the center is CDH here, this event. It's the worst aspects of all of those things. It's like tournaments are pretty cutthroat. And like Magic, when you overlap Magic in tournaments, it's like you get some pretty cutthroat, like kind of unpleasant behavior. When you get multiplayer and Magic, it's like, okay, the infinite priority passes of Magic going into a multiplayer game, that's not a great outcome, but that's like so much of what CDH is about. When you've got tournaments and board games, it's like, well, the intersection there is some real rules lawyering and really, I just think of really long, drawn out arguments. And then like the intersection of like board games and multiplayer, well, that one's a little bit more natural because board games are typically multiplayer, but the kind of like worst characteristics of all of these things can be summed up by this 11-hour 4-player game that was just, it sounds unbelievably painful. And I really don't know how you can defend this in any way. I don't think anyone has. You can watch it apparently on YouTube. I bet if you just Googled 11-hour CDH finals or whatever, you could find it. But like, it reminds me of Succession. It's like, these are not serious people. You can't.
These are not.
If this is what your format's finals look like, it's not a serious format, and you're not serious people. So I'm not saying this represents all of CDH. I'm sure I know there's a ton of people who play CDH who think this is an abomination too. My point only is that if you want this format to be taken seriously, you can't have stuff like this. You really can't. It's unconscionable. 11 hours? I just can't even. It's unbelievable.
I can't believe that.
Really funny though.